All right. Welcome back, friends. Okay, couple of things because now I see Grace. I wanted to let you know I sent you back. I don't know if you saw yet. I sent you back the 4 spheres activity we did 2 days ago. I needed you to edit a couple of things on there, so you might need to look in your drafts and find that one. And I still don't see Kaylee today. Bummer. Okay. All right. So here we go for science. Oh, the other thing is, for those of you that haven't been on yet today or may not have heard, I need you to sign out of it. Not right now because we're in the middle of science. But after science, I need you to click the red sign out button that's in the bottom right of your screen. So that, and then once you're signed out, you can sign back in, and that will update your computer so that you have this new program called Securely that is taking the place of GoGuardian. Okay. And then I can send you messages and you can chat with me just like you used to on GoGuardian. But to get that program, you will have to hit the red sign out button and then sign back in so that your computer updates. Okay. All right. Thank you to everybody that already did that. Some of you, I've already sent you messages and I know that it's working. So thank you guys that helped me out with that. All right, so for science today, we are going to start digging into our spheres. We had a little introduction. We know that we've got 4 spheres and they work together. Today we're going to be talking about the biosphere. You guys should have this on your seesaw that you can follow along. You guys have a printed copy. So here we go. What is the biosphere? The biosphere consists of all life on Earth. The Greek root bio means life. We knew that already now. All living things are part of the biosphere, from the pine trees covering the tallest mountaintops to the strange creatures that make their home in the depths of the ocean. Plants, animals, and bacteria are all part of the biosphere. While the Earth has been around for 4.5 billion years, the first signs of life did not appear until approximately 3.8 billion years ago. How, Sean says, how do they know if there weren't scientists back then? That's a super great question.
Cave people could have told.
Cave people, no, they didn't know. So back then we didn't know. Like we didn't have, like we weren't keeping records. There weren't cavemen writing things down and keeping track of things. Hey, I'm the first caveman. I am alive on, they didn't even have calendars back then to keep track of time. So that's a great question, Sean. Does anybody know? How do we know? Oh, we're not just guessing.
I think I know. I think I know this.
We're not just guessing. Parker, what do you think?
Maybe they like dug so deep into the earth. You know how there's like those fossils, like those different layers of crust and stuff.
Okay. So Parker says, well, it depends on how deep they have to dig to find the fossils. So there's different layers of the crust we learned about, right? And so depending on how deep they dig, tells them how long ago. That is partially correct.
That's what I was gonna say. Like,
and he stole Maggie's answer. She is sad. Sam, would you like to add more?
I ever thought about trees? Like each ring on a tree means it's like a year, so maybe like each layer.
Okay, so Sam said it made him think of like how the rings on a tree, like if you cut open a tree, the trunk has rings on it, and each ring on a tree represents 1 year of life. So he thought that maybe then each year on the planet has like a layer of crust similar. It's not like by the year, and it's not as easy to see the difference. It's like, this is the 2020 layer, and this is the 2019 layer. This is the 1979 layer. This is like, it's not that obvious with the crust. But when we learn about the geosphere in more detail, we will learn that you guys are exactly right. There are different layers, and depending on how deep you dig, obviously the deeper you dig, it's from longer ago. Zeke.
Wait, so in here it says that like that, like humans weren't like the first like life on Earth. Well, so like the bacteria was, so they wouldn't like grow by the humans, but so the bacteria. I feel like the plants in the ocean first two, like the
Okay. Zeke says, and he's read ahead a little bit. So let's go ahead and read, and then we'll discuss what you're saying, okay? All right, the evolution of life. Scientists estimate that life has existed on Earth for 3.8 billion years. The first life forms were single-celled organisms called prokaryotes. Prokaryotes are microscopic, meaning they can't be seen with the naked eye. An example of a prokaryote is bacteria. Many years later, these little bacteria cells evolved into multicellular organisms. What do you think that multicellular might mean? What, Maggie?
More than one.
More than one, right. So a single little bacteria cell, one single little teeny guy, so tiny, I would need a microscope to see it. It eventually, after hundreds of years, evolves into something that has more than one cell, but it's still just a little guy. That, though, was the first life. But is that going to turn into a fossil? And it's going to be so small. How would we find it layers down in the crust? Good question, Zeke. Let's keep going. Okay. Eventually, ocean plants grew. Then the first ocean animals appeared, like jellyfish. Next, plants appeared on land, and finally, land animals appeared. Humans appeared a while later. Okay? We have only been around for a tiny fraction of the biosphere's 3.8 billion years of existence. Okay. When we get into things next week, we're going to talk about something called the carbon cycle, and we're going to talk about fossils, and that's going to help piece together the missing pieces that we have on how do scientists know that the 3.8 million years ago was the first little bacteria tiny guy. Okay, it'll help piece that together, but it's going to be next week on like Tuesday, Wednesday, probably. Sophie.
My mom told me one of the other spheres, and I can't remember. We haven't learned about yet.
There's 4 of them: atmosphere, geosphere, hydrosphere, biosphere. Okay. All right. Sean.
Maybe a bacteria, each cell means a year, maybe?
Maybe the bacteria did what?
Maybe like each cell in bacteria is like a year.
We'll see. We'll see. Okay. Here we go. Sustaining life.
You missed it.
Oh,
No, that goes with.
No, that
it goes over here.
Oh,
Okay. Sustaining life. Life on Earth is made possible because of the abundance of water, oxygen, and sunlight, which heats the Earth to a temperature which can support life. For these reasons, the biosphere is largely self-sustained. That means it takes care of itself. It supports itself. For example, we know already that plants convert sunlight into its food. Right? We learned that already this year through this process called photosynthesis. Then herbivores, those are the plant eaters, and carnivores, herbivores eat plants, and the carnivores
eat meat.
Meat eaters eat the herbivores, okay? When those plants and animals die, their bacteria decomposes the remains, and that provides nutrients in the soil so that more plants can grow. So, kind of how we talked about, when things die, are they still a part of the biosphere? Yes, because as they decompose, they turn into nutrients that then go back into the plants, and the cycle starts all over. The plants get eaten by the herbivores get eaten by the carnivores, eventually die, decompose, nutrients, plants, herbivores, carnivores, die, nutrients. So you see how it's just this big cycle, okay? Now, some of those remains, like the bones and stuff, they don't decompose as much, and so they just stay down in the ground, and they eventually become fossilized. We'll talk about that process next week, okay? Sam.
How did animals and all that stuff, how did it, like, become alive? Because bacteria is so small.
It's bad. Get excited.
All right, Sam says, well, how did the animals come to be from a bacteria guy that's so small that we can't see it? Sean says, well, we got to start with the dinos. But no, the dinos wouldn't have been first. What this says is it started as the bacteria, and then it started as plants in the ocean that turned into jellyfish that eventually, then we saw plants on land and whatever. And then we saw animals on land. And those first animals on land were the prehistoric looking dinosaur type animals, right? Way back in the day.
And they were like the first pictures.
But
What about the caveman?
how did they all just come to be? We got two theories. One that I can't teach in school,
What?
and then the other one that's evolution. Okay? So, and evolution is a real thing. Even if you believe the thing I can't teach in school, creationism, okay? Even if you believe that, totally cool, evolution still is a thing. Things do evolve. It's a scientific fact. You can't just be like, no, science is science. It's like proven. It's like magic, but real, right? I got that t-shirt. I love it. So here's the deal. Like, things evolve, meaning, think about even on a very, like, simple scale. Think about, like, when a frog is born. You guys know a frog is born as a tadpole.
Yeah.
And then it changes and it evolves into something with, like, little legs. And then it evolves into something that ultimately looks like a regular frog, right? But when they're born, it's a little egg that evolves into a thing that looks more like a fish than a frog. And then it starts sprouting its little legs. So it naturally evolves over the course of its life. Think of a caterpillar that turns into a butterfly. It evolves. Things have the ability to change. And so when this says it took place, the first bacteria was 3.8 billion years ago. That's forever ago. Okay? So things evolve slowly. So long ago, people did not live as long. They and even if you go back and look at cavemen, what we know that there were prehistoric people, and when we see pictures and we put together their fossils, we know this because we can put together their fossils, and then the scientists can study that and know what they looked like. They were shorter than us. They were stockier than us. That means like their bones were like bigger and more massive. Like they were just like big dudes, right? Like, right? And they had like much like harsher features. Like their faces weren't as like smooth as ours, right?
They were lumpy.
They were kind of lumpy, Maggie says. Agreed. And as they became more involved in the world and the environment around them, like something happens like, okay, so they knew they needed to be able to maybe move faster to get away from dinosaurs and saber-toothed tigers and all of the crazy animals that lived back then. So they needed to move faster. If they're these big, bulky cavemen, are they going to be able to move fast?
They could
So
like
the biggest, bulkiest guys that were the slowest got eaten. And so, like, right, or killed or whatever by the animals and whatever, because they couldn't get away. And so eventually, somehow, our bodies, as they were reproducing new little babies, realized we need to make babies that can run faster. And somehow, naturally, your body starts evolving, and the new generations that's born is maybe not quite as husky. And then the next generation is born is not quite as husky as that one. And so we've, over millions and millions of years, we've evolved into what we are today. Now, to say Sean is related to somebody, the guy from the cruise, like, they don't look anything alike. I mean, he even kind of walks like slightly hunched over half the time, right? Like, they're not directly related, I can't count back that far in a family tree at all. Don't need to though. But I trust the scientists and the science that has already been proven. If I really wanted to, I could go find all of the research. It's out there. Because there were scientists that studied this and figured this out. And we have something called carbon dating that helps us figure out the age of something. You know the word carbon from carbon dioxide that we breathe out. Carbon is one of the elements, like minerals, elements, all of the things that occur naturally in nature on Earth. Lily has this thing called the periodic chart hanging in her room, and it lists all 100-something of the elements. Carbon is one of the basic elements that exist on Earth, in our universe, in the solar system. And carbon is in every living thing. And when our fossils decompose, there's still little bits of carbon in them. And scientists have a way that they can use special machines and figure out how old the carbon is. They don't know how old the bone is, but they can figure out how old the carbon is that's inside the bone. Okay? Fish have bones too. We can figure it out. Yeah, they have carbon. Every living thing has carbon in it. We're going to talk more in detail about that later. But whether you believe in evolution, which means like things literally like this bacteria turned into the 2-cell bacteria, turned into the 3-cell bacteria. 100 years later, it turned into a 4-cell bacteria. Another 100 years after that, it turns into a tadpole. Another 400 years after that, it turns into a worm. Another, like, you can believe that path, or you can believe that day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, 6, and 7 rested. Either way, though, evolution exists. Creatures evolve and adapt to their environment
Just like humans.
so that they can survive. Yes. We adapt and make changes so that we can continue to survive. The things that we do to adapt these days are usually medical and scientific advancements, technology advancements that help prolong our life so that we live longer. But in the early stages of humans existing, they were adapting and changing based on very real, like think even about the first settlers that came over and all the adaptations and changes that they had to make in the new world so that they could survive. They had to adapt. They didn't know the food and the plants and the trees, and some of them died because they got poisoned by eating the wrong thing.
They had to get used to it.
Right. They had to adapt. They didn't know how to hunt certain animals. So they had to change their ways and learn new ways. So, and animals do that too. Plants do that too.
Some of them had to learn the hard way.
Some people learn. If I have a plant, and have you guys ever seen plants and they have like maybe its leaves are growing this way, okay? But the window's behind me. What are my leaves eventually going to do? They're not going to die. They're going to turn around and face this way so they can see the sun. You guys see me? Yeah. Okay. Now, then if I turn the plant around, and now his leaves are facing away from the window again, he's eventually going to bring his leaves back over here. Like he adapts. He's like, wait, man, my sun's over here. I'm going to reach. And so you might even see like that it's like stem grows longer in that direction. Kendall, in 3rd grade, I don't remember. I think it was at Christmas. You gave me a plant. And I sat it in the window. And it started growing up the edge of the window. And I don't know if I left it here over spring break. I don't remember. But it was in here for a while, even I think to the next year. And it grew all the way up and around the window. It was trying to grow towards the sun. It was like this viney type thing that she gave me. I ended up taking it home at the end of the school year. But it did. It was trying to grow up the window to get closer to the sun.
It's like,
It was pretty cool.
I didn't know the sun.
So, but things adapt and they make those changes and they evolve. Okay? All right. Did you ever stop to think if humans are a part of the biosphere? Well, we are living things, so we are. Unfortunately, the self-sustained flow of the biosphere is not always perfect. Humans often harm or disrupt the flow of the biosphere. For example, when we cut down trees, we are harming ecosystems that lived in those trees. When we burn fossil fuels, we are adding more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, which is also harmful. Lastly, plastic pollution and oil spills harm marine life. That's water, aquatic life. These are just a few ways that human activity can disrupt the flow of the biosphere. And you guys know in that plastic picture down below, the little soda rings, like y'all know you're supposed to cut those apart, right? So they don't get stuck on animals. Like it stresses me out to see that picture. Like, oh my gosh, go cut it. Cut your plastic.
Save the turtles for turtles.
Miss Babs, public service announcement.
Just cut the picture.
Metal barbells and save the turtles.
There you go. Okay. So, you guys have been super quiet today. Question?
I hardly ever.
Concerns? Any issues? Nothing? Okay. So,
Cut your song. One saw a video where there was a straw in the turtle's nose.
okay. We now have questions to answer, and the answers to the questions are in this article. Every single answer is in this article. So, if you're like, I have no idea, read the article again, okay? This is for a grade. Make sure you get it done today, please. For you guys, I don't have anything else. You guys just need to read through this, work on your worksheet, and I will see you a little bit later.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Let me hit stop record. Where's my mouse?